This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with amazing humans who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila. And today's guest is Stan Gwizdak, the CEO of the Kormac Group, a management consulting firm rooted in his commitment to serving others with a clean heart. As a chief executive with over 30 years of leading business transformations across major corporations, Stan founded Kormac to help clients achieve real improvements in profitability and shareholder value through a culture of good people doing good work for good companies. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Karmic Selling, Earning Business by Earning Trust. Stan lives by the philosophy of seeking to help, not sell, beginning every conversation by asking, how can I help you? And I'll start this one by saying, Stan, how are you?
I'm doing great today, Joe. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. And, one reason I want to get you on is talking about the idea of selling. I have this really irrational relationship with selling and money. I remember one day my wife said to me years ago, hey, maybe we should get a real estate license. I'm like, no, I don't want to sell anything. I do podcasts and people ask, how much does it cost to do a podcast? Like, I don't have a bloody clue. I don't want to know. I don't know about selling. So tell me about you, because that's your bag, selling. Yes. Did it come naturally to you? Was it in your blood? Is it in the DNA? Tell me about your love of selling.
It's interesting. The title of my book was almost anti-selling. So the same boat as you.
Okay.
If anybody ever calls me a sales guy, I want to shoot him.
Oh, okay.
100%.
And you could do that. I think
it's illegal. It's legal in South Carolina, and we're okay here. But no, the idea of selling is actually you aren't selling. If you think about today's world, nobody wants to be sold to. We're being hit from the brands. We're being hit from everywhere. And the second thing of the whole selling thing, nobody trusts, or the trust in the world on the big brands, the big names, even Boeing here recently in the news as well. An interesting stat I just saw several weeks ago. 90% of corporate CEOs believe that their customers trust them. However, the stat is when you talk to the customers, only 30% of the customers trust the salesperson sitting across the table from beside them. So my book actually turns it upside down and goes at it from a different avenue. So to answer your question earlier, yes, I started selling as a kid. I actually started selling seeds door to door in a tiny little town east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
It sounds like a fable. Is there a stock involved or anything like that?
No stock, no anything. It was so funny. I was like, it was 9 years old, back of a comic book. It was an American seed company, had a little thing and said, hey, send us your address. We will send you a box of free seeds. You sell them. You send us the money. We trust you. You're going to, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid. You're going to trust me with these seeds? So I got some. My only reason for wanting to get it is I wanted a BB gun. My family didn't have the money, and I asked for one. They're like, well, when you can buy one yourself, I'm like, all right, I'm going to freaking go get myself a BB gun. And I saw that some of their prizes or what you could win based upon what you sold was these different things, and a BB gun was one. So yes, it started all that age. But in Karmic Selling, it's not about how can I sell you as a potential customer. It's how can I help you?
I love that. Random question. What kind of seeds were you selling?
All kinds.
Okay.
So you could get two different boxes. You could get a box of just flowers. You could get a box of just vegetables. So I guess it's 3. Or you could get a box of 50-50 veggies and seeds.
Interesting.
So I did veggies and flowers. I did both. And I sold out. But I started the beginning of my little sales career at that point because I wrote down, Mrs. Gerleski down the street bought from me marigolds, bought from me cucumber seeds, and I put it on just a little index card.
This is a pre-PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, pre-PowerPoint. There was no, I guess, Rolodex or whatever I had, but I wrote it down, and then the following year when I got seeds again, I would say, hey, Mrs. Gerleski, I got your marigolds and your cucumbers you bought last year, but hey, have you thought about tomato seeds? So I was sideways selling.
Wait, so who told you about this?
Nobody.
How did you know to do this?
I have no, all I wanted, my goal was to get a gun. And then I got the volleyball net, and I got other stuff.
You got the gun, though, right?
I did get the gun.
Okay.
Yes.
And was it one of those things where it was like at this point once you got it, or did it fulfill all your wishes? That BB gun.
Very, very good question. Yes, it gave me what I wanted, but it was one of those that it was the single cock. So the BB would come out and almost fall out at the end of the barrel. It didn't have a whole lot of power. So then I had to go sell more seeds to get a pellet gun that I could pump up as much as I wanted to actually have more power behind it.
That's fun. And I just busted your chops about the fact like you knew all these selling techniques. I mean, did you have sales in your family or? So do you ever think back, like, how the hell did this stuff end up in my brain?
I'll be honest, I have no idea. Divine intervention. My dad was a farmer and a miner, and my mom was a nurse's aide. Again, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. There was nobody I could look up to and say, man, this is a great salesperson. Again, it just came to, I want to sell seeds. And, oh, hey, if I do this, I can sell more seeds.
Wow. That's remarkable. All right. So how do you make that into a career? So you have the skills, you have all the stuff that people go to school for.
Yes.
You've already got that in spades.
Yes.
Now, how do you realize, oh, as a grown-up, I don't have to go door to door and sell seeds. I could do something more legitimate. What steps did you then take?
Joe, outstanding question. I actually hated sales. I hated the idea of being a salesperson. I went in and was an engineer, the antithesis of people person, all of that stuff. Worked at Goodyear and the shop floor, all of that stuff. And people kept telling me, Stan, you need to go into sales. I'm like, no, I'm not a sales guy. I don't want to do sales. Don't want to do any of that stuff. So really didn't do sales until I had a massive car wreck on November 17th, 2004.
Wow.
And I was in the corporate world. I was going to be taking over as president of this business unit. And again, I was more operational, never did sales. I quit. I started the beginning of my own company. So in theory, I went back to that kid with zero money because I had nothing coming in, but I had a family, a wife, and 2 kids. I needed to learn how to sell or I didn't eat. So I mentally didn't even realize until I was writing the book of, hey, where did this come from that I started figuring it out? And a ton of it was a ton of trial and error. And when I would meet with CEOs or meet with business owners or meet with anybody in the C-suite, VP of whatever, at the end of the day, I was more about, I'm here to really help you, bud. I'm not going to sell you. So what it ended up being was I became an authentic me, and I didn't care are you buying anything or not. I'm going to be here to help you. And oh, by the way, sometimes I help you, and it intersects with you will hire me and hire my company to do a project.
Wow. Well, one thing you yada there was one thing like you were refusing the sales part of your life. It's almost like you're like Luke Skywalker trying to fight off the dark side. But what you neglected to mention was the jump to an entrepreneur because it sounded like you were part of a corporate structure, your leadership structure. You worked your way up a company.
Yes.
You did all that, but then to start a company. And one of the running jokes on my podcast is entrepreneurs are psychopaths.
Yes.
Why do you do that to yourself? So why the entrepreneurship route? Because after that car wreck, you could have just got another job, Stan. Why was it to be an entrepreneur?
100%. And actually was just talking to Aaron, who was in here just a few seconds ago. And I said, Aaron, the whole big thing for me is I was listening to CD, back when cars had CD players, on book. And it was a book by the name of Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Don't know if you've ever read it.
I'm familiar with it, yep.
So I'm listening to it on CD. And I'm thinking, man, this corporate world, I'm unhappy. I'm not liking it. It's driving me crazy. What am I doing? I'm unhappy, but I got to work. I got to get money. And the world is an interesting place. If you need to make a change, the universe hits you with a feather. You either pay attention to that. But if you do not, the universe hits you with a brick. If you don't pay attention to that, the universe hits you with a truck. Literally, that's what happened to me. I was driving my Mazda Miata November 17th, 2004.
Still driving a Miata in 2004. That's bold in itself.
Yeah, 100%. Amen, brother. Yeah. We'll go down that.
That's another podcast. Yeah.
But a Mack truck pulled down in front of me, and I went underneath while I was listening to the CD of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, trying to figure out where do I go. So I knew I wanted to go be an entrepreneur, and I knew I wanted to do it, but I was scared to make the jump. I didn't have the money coming from heaven from an uncle or whomever. So I didn't know what to do or how to do it. So net effect, the car wreck was the impetus and I quit.
Wow.
I would not recommend that. And I hope anybody.
The car wreck or the quitting part?
I wouldn't either one. Playing chicken with a back truck and a Mazda Miata, not a fair fight.
Right.
But I also wouldn't recommend just automatically just quitting without a real plan.
Yeah.
So for me, I jumped into entrepreneurialism and I had to figure it out at the end of the day.
And so what was that thing? Because you said you fought off the sales thing, but then you're introducing this whole new world of entrepreneurship. What was that venture going to be?
I didn't know.
Okay.
So I stumbled around. I'm like, I'm going to buy a manufacturing company because that's what I knew, making a product. I'm going to buy some business. So started looking in around the Charlotte, North Carolina area to buy a business, buy a company, do something like that. Net effect, a couple attempts, it failed. And I'm like, okay, screw it. I am going to go do my own business. And kind of cliche, I started a management consulting firm, as many ex-corporate guys do.
Sure.
So I started that, and I realized I really loved it. And then in the beginning, it was just me, myself, and I. I would sell the project and do the project, and then grew it over the years more than me, myself, and I.
Wow. And project management, and to me, I always feel like the word manager has sort of a bad rap now.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of managerial mindset. There's all books of like, be a leader, not a manager. You've heard and seen all of this.
Oh, yeah.
How did your ability to take the skill set that you had embedded in your soul into this, but also because being a manager is not the same as being a salesperson. A friend of mine joked a while back that he said, he was a CEO of this company, and he had this employee for 10 years, was just amazing, and one day walked up to her and says, I'm going to promote you to manager. And she's like, how do I do that? Yeah. So how did you connect all of that together? The entrepreneurship, the sales, the management, how did that all flow together?
100%. It was a million pieces of trial and error. Okay, this isn't working. I'm not working it here. What about this? What about this? And I went out and I studied all kinds of different sales techniques. I took every book I could learn on sales, Sandler sales system, spin selling, whatever those books were at that time. I bought them all, and I probably still have them at home. And each one, what I found was each one had sort of some trick. You follow this formula, and here is the answer, and you'll get 1 million sales. Trust me. But what I realized when I tried a bunch of those different things, they didn't work. Because net effect, I was putting on a different suit when I went in to see a potential client partner. I was putting on a cloak of not Stan. It's the Sandler Stan, or it's the spin selling Stan, or it's this Stan. So net effect, I realized, screw all that. I threw the cloak off, and I became authentic to me. That's when it started working.
Wow.
And that's when I was able to realize and look at the person across the table, not as a dollar sign, but say, hey, man, seriously, I am here to help you. You may or may not believe me. However, I am, and here's how I'm going to prove it to you and gain their trust. Because in what we sell in management consulting is all about the trust that we're going to get them the results that they're looking for.
Wow. It's amazing how we're our own worst enemy. And you had what I call a risky business moment. And I don't know if you remember the movie, but
risky.
Tom Cruise had that famous line is, sometimes you just got to say, fuck it.
Yeah.
And I feel like we all need to have that. I remember early on in my career when I started working with the morning show I was on, I used to screw up all the time because I would overthink. I'm like, oh, what's going on? Well, I would push the wrong button. I'd set up the wrong thing. And then one day I had this epiphany. I said, fuck it. I just got to be myself. And so it took me a little while. It didn't take if it took me any longer, I probably wouldn't have a job. But I had that moment where I was like, fuck it. I just got to be myself and do it. So when you had that sort of risky business moment, did it hit you? Like, speaking of hitting the truck, did it feel like you got hit by that truck again?
My first sale, 100%.
Yeah.
And this was a large company. It was General Dynamics. And the guy asked a simple question on LinkedIn, which was a new tool back at that time frame, asked a simple question. I answered it, and I said, hey, why don't we have a separate discussion, and I'll drive you deeper into the answer of what you're looking for. He goes, yeah, absolutely. So we had a phone call, and I said, hey, what's your email address? I will send you the answer. So I gave him 100% the playbook on what he was wanting to do, how to do it, and drive. And I said, hey, God bless, good luck. You can drive this yourself. Here is the answer. He called me back a couple days later and said, Stan, nobody gives this shit for free. Nobody does. And I'll be honest, I was questioning myself. What the hell? I should have charged him $1 million for that or something like that. But at the end of the day, I gained his trust. He said, let's meet. We set up a meeting. His first daughter was born, so we had to push it out a couple days. I thought, oh, no.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. It's being pushed out.
Baby excuse, yeah.
Exactly. But we ended up holding it. He became my first sell. And I realized never be afraid to give the client partner the answer. Never be afraid to help. You're going to have some of them take advantage of you. But that's not the majority of the people in the world. So screw the 5%.
Yeah.
Stick them on the side that are going to screw you. But be humble, be who you are, be authentic, and look to help them. And when you do that, guess what? The linkage of the sale actually happens, and it becomes magic. And you never have to worry about, and you never look at somebody across the table as dollar signs. You look at them as a human, you meet them as a human, and you end up getting the sale as a result of actually helping. It's a novel idea, but and any good sales guy out there will say, "No, we don't do that." But I'll tell you, that's how I do it. And I give the answer away in my book.
Wow.
I give the entire process of how to set up the first meeting, how to prep, how to do second and third meetings, how to follow up. All of that stuff, I give it away.
Wow. Well, I mean, but you probably come to realize is you can give all this information away. It's doing it. I was just talking to a guy the other day. He's an actor, producer, and I said to him, there's a million ideas out there. Everybody can have an idea. But unless you do something, it don't mean shit. And so, sure, you are supplying this information for whatever the book costs, $29.99.
Yeah.
But if people don't do it, it's like, think about all the books that Tony Robbins sells for personal development or financial development. If everyone took to heart what he wrote, man, there'd be the 1% would be like 10% or 20% because there'd be a lot more rich people. It's just doing the work, and that's obviously you've done the work and you're showing the people. But again, not everyone is going to take it, and maybe they won't. Maybe they don't have to. Maybe there's a small part of what you've imparted in the book there.
Exactly.
And why was it important for you to write this book at this point in your life, though? I mean, because like you said, you didn't have to give this stuff away for free. You don't have to help anybody.
Nope.
Why? Why was it so important?
Second half of my life, I've been blessed. So second half of my life is all about giving back. 100%. That's it. I don't care. I don't care if I get paid for it. Yeah, I need to make some money and all of that other stuff.
Bills to pay.
Yeah, it can't be 100% altruistic. But Joe, I'll tell you, it is more about truly caring about that person. And if they are a truly authentic person themselves, I will lean in and I'll help them with every power that I've got. It is giving back. And I felt that I had a interesting turning sales on a head story that I wanted to get out there because I've seen so many other people, folks that have worked for me, folks that I've worked with in the corporate world and other places that believe if you're a salesperson, you got to put on a special cloak and be different when you go in.
Yeah.
If you're authentic to you, unless you're an authentic asshole, but if you're authentic to yourself, no matter what that person pokes on at the end of the table, you can stand strong and they can see that you're firm. But they can also see, hey, this guy's prepped and he's concerned about me and he's trying to help me. That goes a million miles much further. But the answer to why is I felt that I had something important to say and I wanted to give it away.
That's awesome. Why do you think the cliche of the sleazy salesperson, the guy selling you a lemon, why do you think that persists? Even though, I mean, there are children who think this. Like, have you ever thought about, like, why do salespeople get... And you obviously are one of the good guys, but I'm sure you run into some of the bad guys. Why do you think it persists in people in this... And Scorsese said it best, like, the thing about cliches is, like, there's truth in them. But why do you think that still persists to this day?
I think because everybody has had or has seen in their life, whether they were a child or as an adult, they've had that sleazy salesperson. Whether, for me, in my experience with this sleazy guy, was the Kirby vacuum sales cleaner guy. But I think because we've all experienced or have been close enough to a bad experience from a sales guy, quote unquote, that I think it has pervaded out in the world. And the fact that the stat that I said earlier, 90% of the CEOs feel that, hey, their customers trust them. But in reality, they're wrong because only 30% of their customers trust them. So that whole customer intimacy, that whole trust, and you don't get a sale without the trust.
That's great. I'd love to get your take on the word yes and no. Two words there. My math is terrible. But there's a cottage industry of books about the power of no and how to the idea of how no gives you power. But I fight back on that. It's like, well, if you keep saying no, that means nothing ever is going to happen in your life because you say yes to something. And sales comes down to those two words, yes and no. How do you manage that in terms of, like, your mindset in the way you live or lived, and then the power of the yes and no from the client? So in your perspective, like, when you have this attitude of, like, saying yes or no to something, because saying yes to writing a book, saying it's or not, tell me about the power of yes and no.
The power of yes and no is absolutely huge. And as you were asking the question, a lot of stuff was bubbling up in my mind. We've recently said no to a potential project. Actually, just last week, there was a huge project. And we said no because as we peeled the onion from the client was looking for something that was basically humanly impossible in 2 weeks to get done. It was a due diligence for the acquisition of a company, and it was big enough and hairy enough that there wasn't enough there to do it. So we said no. But I qualified and actually had a phone call with the gentleman this morning or today as a follow-up. For us, that power to say no was, we can't give you what you're looking for in the time frame of what you're looking to do it. However, that no can turn to a yes, because a no is not always a no, and a yes is not always a yes.
Right.
So it's in my world, a no and a yes is very fluid. But many times I've had client partners say yes, and we say yes. And as we try to work out the deals, the yeses ended up turning to nos. You hope that they stay yeses all the way through as well. But something interesting, going back to my GE aircraft engines days, I was working with an outside consultant that knew the Toyota production system very well. And as this person was trying to drive us to do change on the factory floor, he said to me and started poking me in the chest by saying Japanese, "You are a concrete head American. You are a stupid American." I'm like, whoa, the whole fight or flight thing came up in the place. I'm ready to start punching this guy in the middle of the shop floor. The funny thing was, he said it in Japanese. I could tell he was pissed. But then the interpreter lady did the same thing, and she's poking me. And I said, I get the poking. You don't need to poke me. But what he said was, in that comment of, "You are a concrete head American," what I was responding to him with any change that he wanted to do, I was saying, no, that won't work because. So my mind was closed to the possibility of, how do we make this work? I give him credit for my career launching forward from there. Because from there forward, I would actually say, yes, this is doable. Here is how we can do this. Not looking for the roadblocks, but saying, okay, open it up. It is yes. But okay, how do we overcome the risk? How do we overcome the issues? How do we overcome all of this other stuff and get the people behind it? That one defining moment in my career was huge. Because even with this person that wanted this due diligence done in 2 weeks, I said, yes, we can do it. Let us circle back to you. I need to rethink this with my team of how we can do this. When we started peeling that onion layer down, it was really physically impossible to get it done.
Wow. I didn't realize that Japanese people call us concrete head Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the literal translation, or that's literally what they think?
Well, they may think of us this way. That was this guy's way. And this particular consulting group was really strong in the whole Toyota production system, lean manufacturing, all of that other stuff. For them to instill change, they had to push you out of your comfort level. And what he did at that moment, and his name was Mr. Takahashi or Takahashi-san, I give that guy credit for literally changing my career. And the idea of saying yes with the potential qualifiers is much better than saying no with all the reasons why something won't work. That actually even changed my life as well.
That's awesome. And when did, an entrepreneur told me this once is, I asked them, when did you realize you were successful or had quote unquote made it? And they said to me, when I could fire clients, when I could say, I don't want your business anymore, or I don't want to work with you. And you sort of mentioned it, but it wasn't, that was, your example was more of like, we can't handle this job. But like, what was your sign of success that the company that you'd built from scratch was successful? Did you have a moment like that where you're like, it could be hey, listen, you could pick and choose your clients. Maybe that could be a sign of success. But was there something like that happened in your career that you're like, oh yeah, I got this?
It's funny, Joe. For me, I'm one of those guys, you reach a plateau that I'm never happy with that plateau. It becomes the next plateau as well. So I never then take a step back and say, oh yeah, we made it, we're done, we can sit back on our laurels. And because the management consulting business, in theory, is a very transactional business model, you've got to keep this wheel spinning of getting new projects or else you're dead. So for me, I don't know if I'm ever satisfied. I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable because we've got a team, and 2023 was our best year ever.
Wow.
And 100% of our work was people called us instead of us calling them. So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So I could say, yeah, we nailed it. But then I'm like, okay, where do we take this and continue to grow from there? The book is one example of that, hiring additional people within the company to lead particular sectors. So for me, I'm never at the point of, yeah, I'm good. That's just my personality as well.
Oh, that's great. And so we talked about the book, and is it just for salespeople?
No.
Who's the book for?
Yeah, the book is for anybody that is. So let me take a step back from that original. If you think about it, in our lives, we are all selling. We're selling to our spouse and negotiating. We're selling to our kids to go do whatever. We're selling ourselves to raise up in the corporate ladder. We're selling to customers. We're selling to suppliers. Hey, please supply this to us. So it's actually anybody looking for a way and a model to improve the way that they approach people and thinking about how to lead an authentic life and be true to who you are internally. And the answer is anybody can be successful. Just be authentic to you, and the success will come. So it's actually not just salespeople. It's an engineer working on a project. It's a janitor, looking for improvements within the business as well. Every level of the business and personally outside of that can get value out of the book on how do I approach people? How do I connect with people?
Love that. His name is Stan Gwizdak. Stan, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Joe, thank you.
You're welcome, and that'll do it for another Forbes Books podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. You can always connect with me on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.